What's up, Phoenix fam?
What's up? What's up?
Thanks for that, James.
My 2 cents got put in. So
All right, we are here for another exciting episode today. And for the first time ever in Macros Mindset and Muscles history, we have a guest. So, our guest today, his name is Philip Pape, and he is the host of a top nutrition podcast called Wits Weights. He is a certified coach and he's known as the Physique Engineer. I really wanted Philip to come on here. We really wanted Philip to come on here
yeah, we
because he obviously is an awesome person and we have a lot of the same thoughts and processes, but also because he has some experience with scientific research regarding fat loss. And I just feel like his knowledge set would be super beneficial for all of you. So, we're going to talk today about time efficient strength training. And I know that this is a big thing for a lot of you getting started. You feel like you don't have a lot of time to dedicate to the gym, and that's okay because we're here to tell you that you don't have to have a ton of time to get started. You can see results with, you know, time efficient strength training. So, Philip, hi, welcome.
Brittany and James, thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm honored to be your first guest.
Yeah, we're super stoked. So, we're also going to just hop right into it because that's usually what we do. And we're going to talk about, what is time efficient training. So, do you want to get us started on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to overthink things, right? And that's at the end of the day, I hope that's our message from this show is time efficient is just making the most out of your time and getting the minimum effective volume or minimum effective dose from your intensity, from your execution, so that you're not wasting hours and hours in the gym and you can find what works for you in your schedule. And then no more excuses. No more excuses that you don't have enough time because you do. And the science shows us as well that you can get massive results even with very little time in the gym.
Love that. I think it's true. A lot of people do overthink it and they get this idea in their head that, this has to be like, I have to dedicate 5 days a week, 2 hours a day in the gym. And that's just not the truth. In fact, it's the opposite. Like, you do not, actually, you shouldn't do 5 days a week, 2 hours a day. Like, that's a lot in the gym. 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. So glad to have somebody else, saying that as well. So, why do you think that it is important for busy people to, think about time efficient training and to incorporate that into their routine?
I think, just like with the diet stuff that we talk about, I think adherence and sustainability are the big thing that holds people back, right? Because they use the excuse of their schedule or life, right? Life comes up and all of a sudden I couldn't train today as the reason they can't train. And then it's like an all or nothing, right? Okay, because of that, and because I can't possibly get results with 2 days in the gym or a 20-minute session, I'm just not going to do it, or I'm going to go do my cardio, right? Or I'm going to lace up the shoes. So I think it's not a matter of making the most of our time. It's a matter of being able to be consistent, and making the most of our time helps us do that. And the ironic thing is, you mentioned like the 5 days a week. You've probably found this with clients. Once you get the bug for how effective training can be, you may end up going to the gym more, but doing it because you really want to. And then you realize how it's no longer an excuse, but we have to start with like being consistent before we get to that point.
Yeah. And like we were saying, like, for people like maybe just getting started who don't feel like they have a lot of time right now, they're trying to incorporate something new into their lifestyle. So starting out with something, that's what we always ask. It's like, how many days a week can you actually stick to each week? Like, not what your idea of a perfect routine is. Like, I want to know 6 weeks from now, are you still going to be able to follow this? Because a lot of people get really excited and they get gung ho and they want to start out with 5 days after doing nothing, and then they burn out.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are already probably spending some time doing what they think of as fitness, and it's not working for them, whether that's cardio or even going to the gym, right? They might be doing the YouTube videos where every session is different. There's no progression. There's a lot of sweating and a lot of intensity, but not a lot of results. And so you're already making inefficient use of time that you are using, right? Like, you see the different extremes. Some people that just don't feel like they have time, period, and then others that do too much of the wrong thing, or they're spending time in the gym and it's not paying off. So I think all of this addresses that whole spectrum.
Yeah. I know that we have like several clients that we actually recommend for those coming to us. Again, ours are like the people that we work with generally are just getting started, or maybe they're just coming back after a long break. And 2 to 3 days, it's like we see phenomenal results with these clients getting, long-term results that actually last with a lesser amount of workout days. And, we're focusing on, think we'll talk about this later, but, certain exercises to maximize these workouts and do them like in an efficient way. So moving on, talking about like what are the benefits of these workouts? We kind of like touched on this just a little bit, but we're going to go further into depth. Do you want to talk to Philip?
I think y'all got it going. I mean, the chemistry. I'm watching y'all. I can see him on the screen. I'm hearing you. Like y'all just got it going. I'm just gonna mess that up. So
I say you go for it.
go ahead.
Okay, so, obviously time is a factor in this. So, what can be a benefit of a shorter workout versus a longer workout?
So let's start with there's two sides of the equation. There's are you getting enough for the workout? And then how much do you have to do? So I told you I'd bring some science in here today. So I'm going to reference one of the greats in this space, Brad Schoenfeld. If you don't know him and you're listening to this, definitely look him up. Ton of studies in hypertrophy and effective reps and effective sets. And he and colleagues in 2019 did a huge study, a meta-analysis of a bunch of studies that looked at the minimum number of hard sets that are effective. Now, you've probably heard the number 10 to 20 sets thrown around a lot by a lot of big names who say like 10 to 20 hard sets is optimal. But we never talk about what's minimum to get like 80 or 90% of those results. And it turns out that 5 to 10 hard sets is actually enough to get way up on that curve before you start to then optimize with the 10 to 20. And that's where we miss the forest for the trees, because you probably have people with Q&A, they're like, how much protein should I get each meal? How many meals should I have? Right? They talk about protein. You're like, are you getting all your protein? And so are you even getting to that minimum effective number of reps? So if you start with that, then you could logically say, hey, 2 days, 3 days in the gym doing full body, you could easily hit that number, right? And you could even just do the same lifts as a beginner and just massively get stronger with very, very little time. The other side of it is the recovery side, right? Like if you're doing too much, especially as a beginner, if you're going in 4, 5, 6 days a week, that might be too much frequency, too much volume, and you don't have enough time to recover. And this affects intermediate and advanced trainees as well, especially as we age, right? The connective tissues get a little more finicky, and our lifestyles get a little bit more crazy and hectic with the stress and the kids and the obligations. We get down to that 6, 7 hours of sleep instead of the 8 or 9 we probably should have. And all of that compounds the stressors that make it harder to recover. So when you consider both sides of the equation, there's actually a case to be made to work out less to get the best results.
That's something that I've actually had to deal with myself as I've gotten older, and instead of doing such higher volume and things like that, my body's quicker to develop some tendonitis things, whether it's in my bicep or it's in my elbow or wherever it's at, because of, like you said, everything to compounding from having a physical day job and then also training hard, and like you said, it's sometimes not getting enough sleep and not enough recovery. Like I need more recovery these days, and so like I love that you brought that up.
And I think sleep is one of those things that get overlooked. Like people want to do all the things, and we're like, hey, how much sleep are you getting a night? And they're like 4 hours. Anyways, that's a conversation for a whole other day. But random tangent, we tend to do that a lot here.
No, it's true. I mean, when somebody says, so just today I talked to somebody, he's not even a client, just a friend of mine who I got to lift, and he's doing great. But he said, well, I'm doing 3 lifts and I always fail reps on the 3rd lift. Can I get rid of it? I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Why are we failing reps? Let's look at the basics of what else you're doing. Like, are you getting enough sleep? Are you eating enough? Are you jumping the proper amount each session? Do you have enough rest periods? Like those kinds of things. So yeah, sometimes we want to go to like the optimal solution or to the next thing, and just we don't have the basics down.
Yeah, and the basics, like they're the basics for a reason. Like
Yeah.
if you're trying to skip ahead and you're not worried about the basics, like you're never going to see the results that you actually want to see because you haven't mastered the foundational stuff, you know? So moving on, talking about like workout, like what does a time efficient workout look like? Say you have somebody that can only work out twice a day. What would, or twice a week, excuse me. What would that workout look like? Like, how would you design it? Like, just in general, you don't have to give a specific workout, but just an example.
Yeah, I think this is where the basics come in of like compound lifts, for example. People, I don't know, there's always like a backlash against things, especially in the fitness industry, where like something that should just be solid always for the end of time, people want to bash it for whatever reason. Like, well, no, but you can get hypertrophy and build muscle with all these other lifts. You don't have to squat, you don't have to deadlift. And I'm not saying you have to do those things. What I'm saying is, multi-joint, big exercises that use a lot of muscle mass, systemic, like your whole nervous system, and natural movement patterns are super time efficient. They're super time efficient because they recruit as much muscle fiber as possible in as few movements as possible. Are you making a trade-off in that you might not get the perfect symmetry and full development of every muscle group that you want? Maybe for an intermediate advanced trainee, but we're talking about time efficiency. So if you're trying to get that, you're probably working out a little bit more anyway, and time isn't the number one be all end all. So something like 3 days a week, 3 movements, 3 to 5 hard sets could be all it takes, right? Like not even that. I mean, you could deadlift 1 or 2 sets and get plenty of effectiveness from it. So we're looking at 8 sets, 3 days a week, takes you half an hour as a beginner. And just start there and literally forget everything else for like 2 years and see how much stronger you get, how much muscle you build.
And I think the key here too that a lot of people don't understand is they're like, oh, three exercises. Like, you see that a lot, 3 exercises in a workout. If your intensity is appropriate for this workout, then yes, 3 exercises should be enough. Like if you're going in and you're just, picking up 2.5 pound dumbbells, to do your deadlifts or
The pink
whatever,
dumbbells, yeah.
I had to pick dumbbells because
No, and they're pink. They're pink
yeah,
dumbbells.
they're pink, they're
Yeah.
purple, like even if you're a woman listening to this, I don't have anything against the 2.5 pound dumbbells, but I promise you your purse weighs more than that. You can carry more than 2.5 pound dumbbells. So the key is like actually learning what like intensity feels like on a RPE like 7 to 8 is what I would recommend. What would you recommend?
Yeah, RPE is gets sticky. Actually, I'm going to do an episode soon called like the right way to use RPE, because I think it gets thrown around a lot. It gets bashed and it gets supported and whatever. I think for a beginner, if we can keep it super simple and do sets across for a lot of people, like sets of 5, sets of 6, sets of 6 to 8, whatever. You don't have to be in the strength regime of like the 5. The 5s with starting strength, even though I think that's an effective program as many others. Sets across, you have a very simple variable to change next time, and that's the weight. That's it. You don't have to think about reps. You don't have to think about RPE. You literally just go up some amount, and if it's the pink dumbbells 2.5, get your little micro plates and go up to 3 and then go to 3. That's still progression. As long as you can keep going up, that's a measure that you're making progress. And like, again, beginners, you're talking 6, 9, 12 months of being able to do that before you need to start adding other stuff in and maybe splitting it up.
So, like for a beginner, if you're listening to this, and you're lifting, and if you have a set that's a 3x5 or a 5x5, and you hit 5 on every set without struggle, you need to go up in weight.
Yeah.
Just if you're wondering what that would feel like, or how do I know if I go up? If you're hitting all of your reps in every set and you weren't near failure on that last set, go up in weight the next time.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've thought about this a lot with the 3x5. Now that I'm more of an intermediate trainee and I've got rep ranges and intensity techniques and all that fun stuff, it's like if you're doing sets across and the weight is the same, the first 2 reps are going to be, each set is going to get harder, right? So, and you've got to give yourself enough rest periods. So we're talking 3 to 5 minutes, folks, and we're not talking 30 seconds like in your, circuit training. Give yourself the time so you can get all those reps. And that last set should be really hard, but doable. And then next time, you're going to adapt as you sleep. Your muscles are going to get a little bigger. The satellite cells are going to get recruited. You're going to have new muscle fibers. It's an amazing physiological process that happens where you've got brand new muscle tissue you've never had in your life, and you're going to have it the rest of your life now. Whether you detrain or not, you're going to have that. That comes into play next time because your body's like, all right, you lifted 135 pounds. It was really, really, really hard. We're going to make that easier next time. Then you go to the gym, you lift 140. Your brain's like, what the, I just made you lift 135. Now you're doing even more. and it keeps going and going. So where I was going with that is that last set of 5 will roughly feel the same hardness each time because you're getting stronger each time, even though the weight's going up. At some point, you know, a late novice, intermediate, it will start to feel like kind of almost a grind. And at that point, it's telling you maybe the frequency or something else has to change.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too, because you will get to a point where eventually you stick.
Yeah.
Unless that exercise is like lateral raises, then you'll just be lifting the same
Sure.
weight until you die.
Lateral raises, don't get me started.
So, you know, those big compound movements, though, there will become a time when you are like, crap, I am struggling. Like, I'm not moving up anymore. Like, congratulations, you're not a newbie lifter anymore. Like, that's how I look at that.
Yeah, and real quick on the compound lifts, I mean, people will think, well, is that enough? Is it enough to work out my whole body? If you look at the movement pattern involved, right, our natural movement patterns of squatting, picking things up, pressing, pulling, you're incorporating a ton of musculature in something like the squat or the deadlift, right? In the deadlift, it's a leg and a hip and a back and a lat and a trap exercise, all, even biceps, like it all gets stimulated either isometrically or through motion. And if you look at a power lifter who doesn't really do a lot of other stuff and all they do is the big lifts, but they can lift a 700-pound deadlift, they probably look pretty jacked, especially when they lean out. And that kind of is good evidence that strength also builds muscle. And so early on, time efficiency wise, you get the best of both, right? Again, later you can add all the fun extra movements and accessories, but early on, like just do that and it should be enough.
Yeah, you know, you mentioned symmetry earlier too, and I know that's a thing for a lot of people. And in bodybuilding, like symmetry is important, but if you're not lean and you don't intend to be lean anytime soon and like have your symmetry judged, stop stressing it. It's
Yeah.
not serious.
Yeah, and our bodies are so different. Like
Yeah,
it may not look like you want it to look. You have to have the right expectations.
yeah,
Just
exactly.
get from here to there, and yeah.
All right, so talking about those movements, what are your favorite compound movements that you like to use for a time efficient workout?
I mean, I'd start with the big 4. I like the overhead press in there, not just the big 3, which is squat, deadlift, bench. I like the overhead press, and then adding in like pulls, pull-ups, and rows. I would say when you're a beginner, you could do a full body workout with some squat variation, some sort of pressing, you know, maybe alternating between bench, overhead, and variations of that, and then deadlifting and pulling. Really, it's all you have to do. And I mentioned starting strength earlier because it's one of the very simple, well-known ways that that's structured. Eventually, you can't deadlift 3 times a week. You know, you can't squat 3 times a week. You know, at the same intensity, you might have to back it off. And then also, if you're the type of person that just gets bored with the same thing over and over, like you don't want to be a machine for 12 months. Yeah, you can front squat, you can safety bar squat, you can incline bench instead of flat bench. Like that's where all the fun, variations come in, as long as you are progressing, right? Progressive overload, the number one principle here, proximity to failure, and you keep progressing.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing.
I really like this, just the overall full body training and having just these few movements and really dialing those in and mastering those movements, like you're saying, for like beginning
Yeah.
lifters and things like that. I think so many people when they first start getting into lifting, they get overwhelmed and they're looking at all these, they're looking at these compound lifts and then these isolation lifts and then these different modifications of doing those other lifts, and they're all over the place and not really doing any of them very well because they're just jumping around from so many things. But really shrinking that down into just like you're saying, maybe just these 4 major lifts, for the max amount of time, efficiency, and then they get really dial those in and then get the most out of those lifts. So I love that.
Muscle confusion.
Oh, yeah.
Muscle confusion.
The myths that
I haven't heard
have to
that in a
die.
minute.
People still believe in it though, like muscle confusion. Like, no, we're gonna do the same stuff until you get really good at it. Like that's how we're gonna make gains.
If people are listening, so this is such a common like client avatar here. So I have like 3 novice programs that I've customized that are like templates, and 2 of them are for strength, and they have like 4 movements in the first few months, and then 1 is for physique and it has like 6. Right? It doesn't have a lot of movements for that very reason. But then one of the first things you hear is, I don't know if this is gonna be enough for me. I think I need 4 days a week. Right? Like I know we're talking about time efficiency, but there is also the other side of it of like, but is this enough to give me the results? And I think we need to preach more about having the intensity. And by intensity, I mean like the load and the execution of the form and developing the skill, because there is a movement pattern. There's like a neuromuscular aspect to this that will make you way more efficient doing it. And then your muscles are going to respond and grow, as opposed to kind of jumping all around and just thinking you need to sweat and work out for its own sake.
Yeah, I think that like with weights, while we're on this, a lot of people strength train, especially women. Okay, I feel like this is more common with women than it is men, but they feel like they have to be doing a hit workout when they're
Right.
lifting weights. And your heart rate, it should get elevated when you're lifting a heavy weight, because you are taxing your whole system, but it's not supposed to be cardio. Like this is a lifting session. This is for building muscle, and building muscle is how you get that tone. I say it with quotes.
I know.
I hate using it, but
Okay.
everybody understands what tone is. You can't get tone without muscle. You get muscle from lifting weights effectively.
Yeah, I was funny. I'm looking up my fitness app on my iPhone because this morning I did deadlifts. I did, one set of 3 to 6. That was my top set. Like speaking of time efficiency, right? And my heart rate shot up to like, I don't know, 140. I mean, I used to do CrossFit. I'm pretty well conditioned, so like it's not going to go crazy high, but and I was hovering in the 130s for the whole workout, just a lifting session. So I do like to tell people that lifting will give you a ton of cardio and plenty of cardiovascular health. There are other things for work capacity that you might need, depending on if you're like a little overweight or under conditioned. But like you said, we
Well,
got to
it's not
change our frame of mind.
it's
Yeah.
not hit heart
Yeah.
rate. It's your heart rate is elevated, but it's more like that zone 2,
hmm
like it's a slower heart rate. So that, I mean, yeah, that's a good point.
And if you're pushing yourself on like hard sets of full body squats, in the lower rep range, like sets of 5 where you're up in the 85% of your max, you are going to get a massive like hit level spike in your heart rate. Probably. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talking about these exercises, do you think like that people can get a workout at home effectively, like with minimal equipment? Like, what are your thoughts on, working out at home? I mean, we have our thoughts,
Yeah.
I would like to hear yours on this too.
Yeah, this is a bigger topic. I think it's working out from home, but it's also like people ask, are bands and body weight and dumbbells and enough? Because a lot of people think of a home workout as being this limited set of equipment. I would argue that one of the best time efficient choices you can make is to build out your home gym with a rack and bar and like some decent equipment. You don't need a lot to get started. And for those who are busy, who are time poor, they're not money poor. Because if we're talking time efficiency, chances are you're super busy, you're like a professional, you have a family. It may not be the money that's the issue; it's the time, and you can invest a couple grand in like a decent barbell based home gym, and now you don't have to commute to the gym. That solves a lot of your time problem right there. So I'm going to start with that, but then the other piece of it is, can you get an effective strength training workout with any type of equipment? Yes, if it challenges you and you can progress, like that's it. So if body weight is enough and now you can make it harder for the next few weeks, great, but you're going to top out. Then you're going to do bands or TRX or whatever, and then dumbbells, and you're going to top out. And although dumbbells are free weights, they get very unwieldy when they get heavy. So now the barbell has like an unlimited range. Like anybody who's listening, it's unlimited. You can grow forever to the day you die with a barbell. So that and machines and cables, that's where you're like, should I go to a gym or a home gym? Obviously, if you want to be doing leg presses and all the accessory work that requires machines, it's your choice. Like, I have some cool equipment in my home gym, and I keep adding toys. Like, I want a machine press badly this year, but that's money, and that takes money to do that. One hybrid solution is have your home gym for like 1 or 2 days a week, and then go to the commercial gym 1 day or 2 a week. There's nothing wrong with splitting it up, right? A home gym also gives you the chance to do like 2 days or smaller sessions spread out throughout the week. So speaking of saving time, like if your issue is you can't commit in, an hour or 90 minutes to one whole session, you can split it up morning, night, or 6 days instead of 3 days, but they're half the session length. And when you have a home gym, that's fine because you're not commuting. So I just answered like 10 questions with
Yeah.
that one question.
No, I think that's a good point though, because this morning, we normally go to like a gym on Wednesday mornings, but this morning we knew we had a lot to do. And I was like, let's just work out at home because we also have a pretty sweet gym set up. But again, we're coaches, like we have invested from our business into our business.
hmm
It's part of the
It's a
So
business expense. I hear you.
exactly. So, we're like, let's just save some time because we lose time commuting. And that time, when you're time poor, it matters. Like
Hmm.
15 minutes each way, that's 30 minutes of productivity that you're losing. So I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, and hopefully all the equipment's free once you get there, and
You don't have to wait on other
not having to
people
wait,
doing
get in line.
20 sets and, you know, circuits. And yeah, anyways, that's cool.
I
So
mean, that's an important point, though. We're talking about saving time. It's like first you have to have your plan, right? You have to have your workouts ready to go, pre-logged in your notebook or your app. You go to the gym, and it's like, what is your backup plan if the equipment's not available and you need to substitute or switch it around? Because as soon as you do that, it kind of throws off your progression, right? It throws off like what you're trying to compare to last time. So yeah.
and especially if you're doing, like what we're talking about, the big compound lifts, and if all the racks are taken up, then you can't do anything, So um, it could be very beneficial, like you said, to invest into your home gym with a rack, and go barbell, of course, and that way you can make the most out of your time.
I think you do get the most bang for your buck with a barbell and like a rack set. When I was first building out like the gym, one of the things I got a 5 to 50 adjustable set because it takes up a very little bit of space, and most of my, female clients are rarely going to go above 50 on some upper body movements like with dumbbells. But the next thing was a squat rack with plates because then the limit does not exist, like you can just keep going. And, barbells are not that expensive.
Right. Yeah. You can get them
I mean,
used.
I mean,
The
for a
Rogue
basic for a
sale.
basic bar,
Yeah.
when you're starting out, if you're not doing some crazy amount of weight and it's not taking that kind of abuse, I mean, $100, you
I
know.
mean,
Yep.
we have a lot of equipment from Frey
Hmm.
Fitness, and like the stuff has held up for us. Like you know, we have barbells and plates and crumbs and things like that, and they've taken a beating. So, picking something like, don't necessarily just go for the cheapest thing because
Yeah.
it's
Right.
cheap, but, do your research and see what's going to last because it's an investment. Like you're taking this money and buying your equipment so that you don't have to, potentially waste time in the gym or even spend money on a gym membership if you don't want to.
Yeah, it's an investment and it'll last forever. I mean, if you get good, cast iron, good angle iron, steel equipment, will last forever. One of the, I guess, pushback or early questions I get from clients is like, what about safety? Working out from home, people always wonder about that. And my main thing to that is just the squat and the bench are the two lifts you have to worry about, and you have to have spotter arms or pins and learn how to use them properly and position them, and you'll be fine. Don't dump a bar off your back like in CrossFit. Don't, don't not have spotters when you're benching because yeah, it can, land on your neck. Don't put rings on or don't put clips on when you're benching either if you need to slide the plates off. So like little tips like that, because I know again, especially women who have there's the gym intimidation factor in the gym, but then there's like the safety intimidation factor at home, and we have to address those.
I've totally gotten stuck under a bar before.
It's
So
not
like I'm
fun.
not afraid to
It's
like
not
lift
fun.
by myself. I will use spotter arms when I squat and things like that because
Yeah.
it's easy to just squat down, set the bar down.
Hmm.
Bench is a whole nother story. And this one time I got stuck under it. I didn't have the clips off, so I
Hmm.
couldn't tilt it. And I was like yelling for my kids, Trin. I mean, I wasn't like,
And you had to
I
shimmy
wasn't
it down.
hurting or
Yeah.
anything, but I was like, stuck here. And I couldn't really shimmy it down because I was in the rack.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There was no room for
So,
it.
my kids, they came out and they helped me or whatever, but not having the clips on, I think, is a good one. As long as you have the safety, to tilt it, like you're not
Right. And
gonna
get room.
hit your
To,
vehicle or put it through a wall or something like that. So, design is important for that too.
and James knows as a guy, like you don't want to be shimmying that bar down.
Oh
Yeah.
no, oh no, 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 not at all. And I think a lot of people don't. I think there's a big group of people that don't really know how to use a squat rack properly and safely. Like I don't, and I see it all over social media and things like that. They're squatting outside the rack
Mm,
without any spotter arms or anything. And then there's some bad things have happened. There are not too long ago, someone actually died from squatting.
yeah.
Um, just he just went down. He was still strapped. trapped underneath the bar. But if some simple measures were taken, like he wouldn't have been in that situation. And it's sad, but that is the benefit of a full rack, a full safety rack. Not a half rack, but a full rack. You're protected on all four sides, and having those pins, like you mentioned, those pins in place. So like if you can't come back up, it's going to catch it. If you
Yep.
fall forward or back, it's going to catch it. Like you're okay. But just knowing how to use it and how to set it up properly before you start your lift.
That could be a whole podcast
You
episode.
totally
Just
could.
right, like how to put them in the hooks. Like
Yeah.
don't squat away from the rack. All these silly
Like
things
that's a
people do.
YouTube series.
Yeah, a gym fail series.
Yeah.
What not to do.
So moving on. Now, what are some common like myths, misconceptions that you like hear about time efficient training? Like commonly if you have a client starting, like what are some like we've kind of talked about it briefly, but we haven't gone into detail.
Yeah, the biggest myth I think we have alluded to, which is that you need a ton of exercises and volume to grow. And I mean, I could throw out other studies that, and I won't be specific, but I could if needed. One of them looked at high intensity versus high volume training. And we've seen oftentimes that high intensity, meaning, high load, low reps, can be extremely, extremely effective. And you give yourself time to recover and you come back and you're now stronger and you keep making progress. Well, so I can think of a client, her name starts with K. I don't know if she would want me to say her full name, but we've been working on just building muscle for like 4 months, which I love. I love clients, especially female clients who just want to like be in a surplus and build muscle because so many more people need to do that in my opinion. And early on, like 3 or 4 times, she would message me as she was going through her program. I don't think I'm doing enough. Like, can we do more? Like, do I need more? What about this program? What about this program? You kind of get that. And we always come back to, let's look at the numbers. Let's look at how things have changed. Your waist size hasn't gone up. Your biceps, thighs, and chest have, and your lifts have gone up and you feel great. You want to ask that question again? Like, you really want to change now and everything's going well? And I get it, right? Because there's a psychological factor. There's the idea that you want to like be active. And if you want to be an active person, you can still have the 3, really effective strength training sessions and then go do your yoga, go do your group class, go do your sport, pickleball, go for your hikes. Like it's okay to have that stuff in there because we're not talking about 99.9% optimality. We're talking about life, right? And just like enjoying yourself. So if you have to be active, if you have to sweat, it's okay. Some cardio is okay. It's not going to kill your gains. It's fine. I kind of took that around, but that's like the biggest misconception is like, I need to do too much, Yeah.
And like your gains, like while we're on that topic, like, as long as you're eating appropriately for your goals too, like you're going to be fine. It's going to be okay.
Yeah. That's a whole hot topic about cardio. That's one big myth that comes to mind. Just kind of the minimalist training, like look into that. If you're listening to this, Google like minimalist strength training and just see what's out there. It's very fascinating to see. There are some people that take that to an extreme, like squat once a week, bench once a week, but you're doing it like 95% 1RM and you're actually training very effectively, full range of motion. You're doing it right. You're executing and then you're sleeping and eating. And then next time you come in and you're stronger. So there's a lot of ways to skin this cat.
Yeah, I'm working with a client right now. Most of our clients are fat loss, but I love when I get a client that wants to grow, and especially when it's a female, because I get to embrace that, and like they get to, I get to help them flourish and see their strength and their possibilities. And this client, Hallie, she won't care if I say her name. She came to me, and she was one of those ones that would do a bunch of different exercises and stuff. She worked really hard at getting her form down on her own before she started working with me. So that wasn't like an issue, but she would just do like 20 different exercises, workout. So when I brought her in and like her movements will be anywhere from like 4 to maybe 5 or 6 on a gym day, not when she's with me in person, she's like, I don't feel like I'm doing enough. I'm like, well, why do you feel that way? Why do you feel like you're not doing enough? Like, do you genuinely feel like maybe you didn't push yourself hard enough at the end of a session? Or do you just feel that way because you always thought you had to do more? And, shifting that mindset around expectations that come with strength training and how much you have to do is a key part of this.
Yeah. And I still struggle with it myself today when I'm in the gym and I'm doing like my first lift or two is usually some form of compound lift that I give myself plenty of rest period. And the rest periods, that's another area that people really struggle with early on because they're used to the circuit training, the Nautilus machines, the supersets, rather than giving themselves the space to fully recover for that next set. There is a place for for intensity techniques, and we can talk about that because that's a big one that I had on my list for how do we save time, like for a more intermediate trainee. But generally, if you're doing the big lifts, you've got to give yourself the space. And rule of thumb, at least 3 minutes. That's my opinion. Like at least 3 minutes of rest. Just get that through your head that that's required. And a lot of, especially women, are like, "Oh, but I'm just sitting around." I'm like, get your steps in. Like check your email. It's fine. Like just don't let it go to 10 minutes. But make use of the time and multitask.
You know, I know you have a timer built into your app too, and I'll be like, the, oh, I did it, and it went really fast. I'm like, well, did you hit the rest timers in between each set? And they're like, no. I'm like, that's what they're there for.
Yeah.
It's not a suggestion; it's a requirement for this workout. Like, it's a step. Like, do the set, hit the timer, complete the set. Next set after the timer beeps, after you run out of time on your rest clock. Like, it's not a suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
It's there for a reason. I think that's a big issue,
Yeah.
especially with women. I mean, women always want to skip the rest timers, and ladies, I love you. Stop skipping them.
Which is why I'm always hesitant to then segue to like the other time intensity techniques. I don't know if you want to get into those because I had a few ideas for
Yeah, go
Oh,
for
other
it.
way. Okay, yeah. So sometimes when you're doing these compound lifts and you might have 3 or 4 in there, it doesn't seem like a lot. But when you do have these rest periods and you're getting stronger, like after a few months, those rest periods tend to be a little bit longer, just to help you recover between sets. And now you're stretching to 45, maybe 60 minutes. If you need a few more lifts in there, now you're stretching to 90. And when we talk time efficiency, that might sound like way too long of a gym session. So one simple technique early on that I don't think compromises much is to warm up the next lift as you're in between sets of the first lift. Like I think that's a good approach if you have a second bar in the rack. That's the challenge. It's like you're either in a gym with a second bar or you've got an extra bar at home. So for example, you're squatting and in your rest period, you warm up the bench, right? Very nice way to shorten the time of your session. And then the other thing is intensity techniques. So these would be supersets. Like that was a superset, but that was more of a low key. I mean, like you're doing the working set of this and then the working set of this and going back and forth with very little rest. And ideally with antagonist muscles, right? Like opposite muscles. So you're not fatiguing, but you may intentionally do similar muscle groups for the sole purpose of staying near that, metabolically stressed regime, right? That the effective reps, those last few reps, you keep it there where you're just wiped and you're able to get the fewer reps and less time, but just as effective of a stimulus. And then the other techniques are going to be all the bodybuilding stuff that you guys I know are familiar with, which is drop sets, rest pause, myo. I don't know how much you do that stuff. What's that?
We love a good drop set.
Oh,
Yeah, it's fine. You just because then all you're doing is you're keeping everything up and you're keeping the pump. You're staying close to that end range, and you go from like 12 reps to 6 reps to 3 reps, and you're done. And it takes way less time. So it's okay to do that. I think for like accessories and isolation movements, you're not probably going to do that for your back squat.
Definitely. Don't
Yeah.
recommend. I think that's a good point. Did you have more?
Actually, the only thing that came to mind is in Mass Research Review. A lot of your listeners may be familiar with that. That's the Stronger by Science guys. They recently reviewed time intensity techniques and they compared traditional workout to all time intensity techniques and compared to the progress on the lifts. And they found almost no difference. Like you can save 50% of your gym session by doing a lot more of those. But again, I caution people to like not jump into that until you've got the basics down.
Yeah, master the basics first. That's what it's there for. It's a key part of this process. Do you have anything that you want to add before we keep moving on?
No.
Okay. So now modifications. I know that, a lot of people have limitations. Maybe they have previous injuries, things like that. You know, I'll say as someone with back pain, like I know what the issue was there and what I had to do to correct that. But maybe somebody who's freshly off of an injury or something, like how would you modify this type of workout for them? Or what kind of like recommendations would you make for somebody to modify?
I mean, that's going to be very individual, right? As you know, like when you were on my show, it was like, it depends, it depends, it depends.
Yeah.
And I think the principles are the same no matter what. We don't want to be compromising. So if you're talking about an injury, and I've had several myself and I've had surgeries, you know, believe it or not, the first thing I'm going to talk about is diet before I talk about training, because I want you to be eating and not in a diet when you're injured or recovering or sick, period. Like I'm going to start there because I think they go hand in hand. But as far as modifications, so what are we saying? Like if you can't do certain movements, there's like 20 substitutes for every movement.
Yeah, like
Right.
if you can't do a back squat, maybe you have a disc issue in your neck and you can't, get the bar on your back. Like,
Yeah. So these are excuses, folks. These are excuses, but it's okay. So I got really creative. I had rotator cuff surgery. Well, I've had a back surgery and a rotator cuff surgery, and 3 weeks after my rotator cuff surgery, I'm in a sling, and I'm like, I really want to squat, and my trainer's like, try a safety bar squat, see how it feels on your shoulder. And when you have rotator cuff surgery, the pain isn't really like on the top. It's kind of inside and on the outside here. So I'm like, okay, here my arm in a sling, other hand on a handle, and I'm able to squat. So deadlift, I got a deadlift harness that can hang on my neck so I can deadlift without touching the bar, right? Like now these are maybe a little extreme, but there's no excuse because there's always something you can do. You can use a leg press. You can do several isolation movements and use supersets if we're talking time, right? I don't know. There's no excuse. You can train with one arm. If you've only got one arm in a sling, train the other arm. There's this crossover effect, and some people even think there's a vertical crossover effect, like training your legs can help your upper body and vice versa. That's kind of mixed, but the crossover left and right is supporting the evidence. And I can tell from personal experience that when I was training my right arm, my left arm didn't atrophy as much as I thought, and I'm chalking it up to like getting in the gym and working out.
so for those who may not be familiar with like what the crossover effect is that like
Oh yeah,
you
no,
were just saying?
yeah. It means if you're not using one arm, but if you're training the other arm, there's some crossover in maintaining the muscle mass and strength in the non-moving arm, and they've seen this in studies. It's pretty cool.
I mean, I knew what it meant, but I
Yeah,
know
yeah,
we're gonna be like, what the hell is that?
yeah.
So I think that's a good point too. One of my favorite things, like, because I have lower back issues and they've been controlled like through diet and daily movement and things. So I've avoided surgery, but one of the movements that I can do, like even if I'm having an issue, is a belt squat, like a heavy
Yeah.
squat.
Pitch
because
shark belt
it's
squat. Yeah.
loaded, it's loaded at the bottom instead of the
Hmm.
top, so your spine isn't like compressed. And just if you're listening and squats are an issue for you, that's always an option.
That's a really good one, and you could rig that up at home with like a landmine,
Yep.
for example, is one way to do it, or kettlebell. Yeah, yeah,
Boxes.
yeah.
Have
And
some-
that it's just a little awkward to get into position, but yeah. Oh, speak. What was I gonna say about oh, I don't know. I was gonna say something, but it's okay. Keep going.
If it comes up, just be like, I remember.
Yeah.
So let's talk about clients. Like, I know we've had several clients who do like time efficient workouts. They work out 2 to 3 times a week. We kind of mentioned that briefly. Like, tell us a story of like one of your clients that saw success with this.
Yeah, I mean, all my clients really like. I'm a big fan of strength first. Period. Muscle centric. Well, Dr. Gabriel Lyon put it as muscle centric medicine, but I like the context of health and physique going hand in hand with getting stronger. And because most of my clients are at least in their 30s, but most are in their 40s, 50s, and beyond, the idea of compound lifts and time efficiency goes hand in hand with what tends to be effective for them and at their point in life. So I can think of a client, Kim, who's another one who is building muscle and was doing like 6 day a week, when we started some sort of YouTube. Everybody always says like, do you know such and such on YouTube? I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. I don't, I don't follow all the, and when I look them up, I'm like, okay, so you're using the pink dumbbell. Maybe not, maybe you're using a barbell, but it's like more in the line of CrossFit and boot camp style at 45, that kind of thing. And we just strip it all down. And usually what happens in the first few weeks is the feeling of accomplishment just from the lifts going up on the bar starts to create that motivation that wasn't there before for working out and going to the gym, right? And the time efficiency piece of it, of like, I'm not doing enough, it usually gets overridden when you see the results. And so it comes down to like, I'm a big fan of tracking your information, tracking your measurements, tracking your lifts, action oriented goals, not results oriented goals. So yeah, that's, you want to lose 20 pounds, that's fine. But what is your goal today? Like, what are you doing in the gym? What are you doing in the kitchen? I'm kind of rambling here, but like pretty much all my clients do some form of compound lifts with some accessories. And if we need to squish the time a little bit with time intensity techniques, we will. And it's not rocket science and we don't have to overcomplicate it.
Yeah, I like that. So, yeah, that's all good.
Yeah, I love the way you said that. About the losing weight and what's your goal? What's your goal today?
Yeah.
I love that. I'm gonna steal that just so
So
you know.
I
I probably stole it
love
from
that
someone
in
else.
terms of like behavioral goals versus
Yeah.
outcome goals. And it's the same thing. Like
Yeah.
action would be the behaviors that you're going to do to get to said results, because you don't get to this point without doing all of the things in between. You have to take steps to do that. You know, I feel like you need to ask some questions.
You're doing so great though.
So, okay, to wrap this up, what is one piece of advice that you would give to someone that is trying to get started?
That's always a hard one. I have so many. I think since we're talking about training, having the proper intensity and execution is going to trump everything else. I think it's going to trump like programming. It's going to trump the schedule, the time efficiency, all that. Literally just, I mean, we were talking about it before, James, right? Like having only 3 or 4 lifts is a good way to cut out the distraction and just say, I'm going to get really good at these. This is a skill. It's like playing an instrument, right? Or food tracking is a skill. Like getting the lift down and executing it properly is going to be the first thing you want to do. And I would say the problem with most people when they get started is they don't seek out for help and they don't try to get a form check and they don't have a coach of some kind, even if it's like a free coach on a community who's like giving form checks, and they start to progress or maybe progress and they're just doing it all wrong and they're prone to injury and they're not going to be efficient and make progress. So if you can get that form down, but not use it as an excuse to like take forever, right? Because I don't want to see you 3 months later saying, I've been working on my form this whole time. Like you should be able to nail your form within, I don't know, 3 or 4 sessions. You should be able to get from 0 to 70%, and then a few more sessions from like 70 to 90. And then at that point, it's all refinement for the rest of your life, right? So intensity and execution first, and then you can just push the heck out of the progression safely and efficiently and get, jack, strong, tone, lean, whatever you want.
Yeah, I love that. And like you're talking about form checks too. So I know you have a Facebook community. Is that something that you do in your community?
Yeah, we do that there. I also have a private community where we do that. But yeah, we'll throw that in. We have a bunch of lifters who are happy to chime in and help you out if you're open to some constructive criticism.
That's we have because we have a community as well, and we do like chats, and we have like a ask a coach a question like type of chat, and we leave that open. Like if you want to get a form check or whatever, like you're more than welcome to drop a video. So that's cool. I love that other people, offer that as well. So now that we're like wrapping this up, where can actually, you know what? I'm going to steal your question.
Oh no.
What is one thing that
Yeah.
you wish that we asked you and the answer?
Oh no. Yeah. Geez. I see now. You caught me. I should have had one in my back pocket. We talked about the home gym. We talked about modifications. Time. I'm trying to think if there's anything else related to time efficiency that we haven't covered. Is there anything that you guys could think of?
We covered everything. I think we did really good.
I think we did too. Yeah. I mean, every set has to count, right? That's it. Like every set has to count, and more is not going to do it. You got to be just very effective, and you'll get your results. I can't think of another question. You guys did a great
Going
job.
through the motions is
Yeah.
also not.
You guys are super prepared, by the way, for everybody listening. Like I'm the first guest, I guess, but let me tell you, Brittany and James were like awesome. They sent me notes. They tell what we're going to talk about. Like I was prepared. So thank you.
That was very nice of you to say, but that was all Brittany. But I did get through
You're a
a decent
team.
message, and I forgot to respond to you yesterday. I apologize for that. I was driving, but this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you being on our podcast.
So
Likewise.
tell us where our people, our listeners, can find out more about you, and tell us about like your like any freebies, website, whatever.
Sure. I'll say definitely the podcast, right? Wits and Weights. Go follow it now. And you'll also hear Brittany and James on that podcast. I don't know when the 2 episodes come out, but you get, the best of both. They actually talked about getting the cost of getting lean, extreme leanness. So that's a good one. And then if you go to witsandweights.com/free, there's a ton of guides in there. And I would direct you to maybe the muscle building nutrition blueprint, because it covers a little bit of nutrition and training all in one for people who want to build muscle.
And look, I just want to say that Philip and I have talked a lot back and forth, and I've totally stalked his website and everything, and he's got some good stuff there. So I highly recommend you go check it out.
Appreciate it.
And if you're listening to this, of course you are, because you went through it all. Subscribe, follow his podcast, Wits and Weights. Leave a review on both, and don't be afraid to share. Like, somebody is struggling with this, and they could benefit from hearing this conversation.
Absolutely. I feel like I have to fill in the gap. I'm such a talker.
Anyway, with that being said, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Great first guest episode.
I think I shared a lot today, and brought awareness to all this. No, I'm just kidding. But no, this has been a lot of fun. It's been a great first time having somebody on. This is really cool.
James, you're like the minimum effective dose of podcast interview. You say it when it needs to be said.
Yeah,
he's
I'm
like that with macros. I'm like that with training. I'm like that
there you go.
Just enough to be effective.
So with that being said, macros, mindset, and muscles, I'm Brittany.
I'm James.
And we're out.